So I am in Colombia, not Colombia, South America, Columbia, South Carolina. This place has a lot of rich history. Of course, it's the state capital of South Carolina. But I'm going to show you guys the state house, and we're going to look at the statues that surround the state house, and we're going to give you a big, little. We're going to give you the history. We're going to give you something, okay? I'm going to give you something. Um, so we're gonna essentially look at the each statue and give you the history of the people that surrounded them. Now, some of them won't be so cool. There's a lot of racist history, especially when it comes to South Carolina and the South in general. But there's also a lot of good history as well, and we're gonna examine both. So this is the hotel that I'm staying in. I'm staying in the Sleep Inn. So there's that. All right, so we're gonna head out. But first, we're gonna stop by and get some complimentary breakfast because why not? I paid for it, right? It smells really good. I'm waiting for somebody to check me out. Hello? I hear somebody back there, but hello? I, oh, okay. Okay, so I was finally able to check out. Um, so we're gonna hit the road. So beautiful Columbia, South Carolina. You know, it's like any other large southern city. Well, any other mid-sized southern city. Columbia isn't considered large. And I think one of the things about South Carolina is that they pride themselves on not being metropolitan sprawls. So, there's that. Although I would love to live in a state that was larger. You get what you get for what you can afford, right? Anyway, packing up my stuff. For breakfast, we have an apple because your boy is on a low-calorie restrictive diet. I forgot to charge my phone, so now it is like this. So I'm still gonna go to the state house. I just don't know how long it's gonna be before my phone gets an adequate charge to where I can use it to give me directions on how to get to the state house. So we're gonna wait. Okay. Okay. So I am approaching the South Carolina State House. I'm gonna go up these stairs. Here's the view that I have. So this is like a little garden. And if you look really, really, really close, you can start to see what looks like the state house. So yeah. So we're coming up on our first statue. This is a very interesting one. look straight ahead. Let's walk up to it, and then I'll tell you a little bit about it. This is a statue of J. Marion Sims. Let's get a little closer to it. Now, J. Marion Sims was an interesting person because he is considered the father of modern gynecology. But the way he went about it was very unethical. He would find people who wanted to rent out their slaves. And essentially, he would experiment on the slaves, black women, in unseemly ways. He would cut them open, leave them open, remove their uteruses. There was even some thought that, there was some sexual stuff going on there as well. He was not a good person. He was very racist, but he's considered the father of modern gynecology because his experimentation on slaves and on black women led to a lot of advancements. Women at the time were struggling with I can't remember the condition, but there was a condition where women would essentially urinate on themselves, and it was considered like a sign of immorality back then because people didn't understand science. But his experimentation on these slaves led to innovations in that and innovations in other things as well. But he was not a good person himself. He was a very, very bad man. Very evil human being, J. Marion Sims. Disgusting human being. All right, so let's walk up here a little bit more. Let's see what else we can find. But this is one of the people who South Carolina considers like a hero because of the medical advancements. One of the interesting things about J. Marion Sims is that he didn't do well in medical school either. He kind of sucked. He went to medical school in Pennsylvania, I believe, and then he went to practice in other states, and then he finally went to Alabama, and then he went to South Carolina where, he made a lot of innovations here in gynecology, but a racist human being, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So we're finally here at the State House. The State House is a very interesting place. Now this behind me is the South Carolina State House. It was built over like 50 years. So between 1855 and 1907 is essentially when it was built. The reason I say that is because during the Civil War, it was substantially damaged by cannon fire. The majority of the people who created this building, brick by brick, were enslaved Africans in the state of South Carolina. Now at the top of the building here, up until, I believe, the year 2000, they had a Confederate flag, a very large Confederate flag. Now, the Confederate flag was later moved. Now, in the 2000s, in the late 90s or the early 2000s, the Confederate flag was eventually moved. It was moved to what you would see right here in front, right here. Now, of course, in 2015, that all changed. A white supremacist by the name of Dylan Roof went into a congregation of black people that were worshiping in Charleston, South Carolina, and he killed them. So this pushed the state to take down the Confederate flag that was here in front, and essentially it was eventually taken down, and the Confederate flag is no longer here. I believe it's actually in a museum. In the front, you'll see a bust of George Washington and the building itself. This is a huge and beautiful building with a very, very complicated and sordid history. It's believed that the foundation was built by enslaved people, and the majority of the building itself was built by enslaved people as well. If you live in South Carolina and anybody ever tells you that black people have contributed anything to the state or anything like that, you could point to the state capitol and remind them that your ancestors built this. This is another monument to the people that fought in the Spanish-American War. South Carolina sent a lot of troops to the Spanish-American War. So much so that they erected this monument for them. You could see here there's a crest, and you'll see there Cuba, the Philippine Islands, and Puerto Rico, and the US. The reason why Puerto Rico is spelled like that is because during the Treaty of Paris, they misspelled the name Puerto Rico, and it stuck. Essentially, many people believe that the person that was translating the documents wasn't proficient, or they had somebody who didn't even speak Spanish at all translating the documents, and essentially they mistranslated it, or they spelled Puerto Rico the way they thought it was said. So there's that. Also, a lot of South Carolinians were experimented on. Well, they volunteered, quote unquote, for the yellow fever test, basically to test to see if somebody had yellow fever. And eventually Congress was able to give them a special gold medal. So really interesting. There's even some Puerto Rican history here as well, because Puerto Rico was part of the places that the United States won and were eventually able to colonize after the Spanish-American War. I'm walking around a little bit more. It's starting to warm up. It was cold at first when I first came out here, and now it's starting to warm up. So I'm really feeling that. I like that. We like the warmth, you know? So there's that. One thing that I noticed is that there are a lot of people taking photos really early in the morning. Look at this beautiful couple. This beautiful couple over there with their two little dogs taking photos. But yeah, there is a statue over here of John C. Calhoun, and there's also another one of Strom Thurmond. I'm gonna show you those as well before I head out. In 2001, the state of South Carolina erected a African American history monument here, and it was done by a man by the name of Ed Dwight, and it essentially shows the entire history of South Carolina. So here we go. Right here we show this right here. Basically it says cotton and rice Negroes, essentially, and it shows them being sold at auction. It shows them coming on slave ships, working, then fighting essentially for this country. And it even says here, the 1st Regiment, South Carolina veterans, God gives liberty. This is a beautiful sculpture. And so this is the essentially emancipation. And we see here the jubilation on their faces. And then there's another side to it as well that I'm going to show you. "40 acres and a mule." It's really interesting. After emancipation, the South saw a lot of black people that were enfranchised and given power on the state and also the federal level for representation, especially in Congress. And this is, I guess this is the Great Migration, leaving the South to go up north. And this is Brown versus Board of Education. Briggs versus Elliott. We're going to talk about that in a separate video. And then essentially we have some protest movements, and essentially right here, this gentleman, "We deserve equal rights." And then we have musicians, Supreme Court justices, astronauts, various types of engineering fields, and they're all black. They all are representative of black people within South Carolina. So there's that. This is a statue that's over here. I'll show you. I believe this is Wade Hampton. I'm not sure, but we're going to find out. I believe it's Wade Hampton, though. Yep, this is Wade Hampton. So if you live in South Carolina, chances are somewhere on your street, somewhere in your county, there is a Wade Hampton street or a Wade Hampton something. So it's made for this man, Wade Hampton. We're going to tell you the history of him. As you see, he's on a horse. This is a beautiful sculpture for a not so beautiful human being. So we're going to talk about him in a minute. Wade Hampton was part of a group of people known as the Redeemers. They were part of a white Southern organization who did not believe in Reconstruction, and essentially they ended up making him the governor and then also the senator for the state. He was an active part of driving legislation that put together what we know today as the Jim Crow laws, and he was an enslaver as well. When he was governor, he put together a paramilitary group to stop black people from voting, and essentially he was involved in the lynching of hundreds of black people throughout the state of South Carolina. Although he did a lot of construction efforts and reconstruction efforts in the state, he did not want black people to reap the benefits of any of those, and essentially made it his mission to make sure that black people in this state lived in abject fear, poverty, and under the threat of racism 24/7, 365. There was a group of white people that left when I started mentioning that he was involved with lynchings throughout the state, and I'm pretty sure it made them very uncomfortable. So this right here is a statue of Strom Thurmond. Very interesting history. Well, let's going to start with the big stuff. He led one of the longest filibusters to stop civil rights in America. And later it was found that he had a black daughter. So I find that very funny because this man was a very, very complicated human being, very racist human being. He did everything in his power to make sure black people did not have civil rights at all in America. And the whole time he had a daughter. And the thing is, really crazy thing is, he supported his daughter, right? He kept her a secret. She went to SC State in Orangeburg on a full scholarship. He consistently gave her money. She was essentially well taken care of throughout her entire life by her father. And I don't know, maybe it was like a Southern thing. As a man, you're supposed to take care of your kids and your family. But his daughter passed away about 10 or